Maya Angelou tells of a dream that she had. In the dream, she's a young woman and she's walking down this tunnel, dimly lit corridor, something, and it just seems endless. And she's walking on, and she doesn't know exactly why she's doing it or where she's going, but she knows she needs to keep going, so she walks and walks. And then in the distance, she sees this figure standing there watching and waiting. She doesn't know who it is, can't see who it is, but knows intuitively that this person is someone she's supposed to meet. And so she keeps walking and closes the distance, gets closer and closer. When she finally gets close enough to be able to see who this person is, she realizes it's her great-great-grandmother. Now, this was a woman who was dead long before Maya was born, but she, in the dream, recognizes her. She lived her whole life as a slave. And Maya knows that she's supposed to talk with her, but she's supposed to be quiet to begin with. So she just stands in front of this woman who looks her up and down and studies her face, and after the longest time says to her, "So it's you. You're the reason. Everything I went through, everything that I had to do, everything that I suffered and took on, everything I did, it was all for you. You're the reason. It was all for you." Put yourself in her place for a moment. You're the one encountering an ancestor. When this person stands and looks at you, the message is the same. Hear it. What does it do? What feelings come up? Gratitude? Responsibility? Obligation? A sort of a heaviness or a lightness? Humility? In the text today, Jesus is talking about some religious officials who seem to have none of that. They have a privileged place in society. They are educated, they are connected, they are well-to-do, some of them filthy rich, and some of them working to get richer. Now, it's not a blanket indictment of scribes, Pharisees, Sadducees. That's not what's going on here. And that old thing about Jews and money that carries on down through the ages, it has some of its roots here. Jesus just had this healthy conversation with one of the scribes, if you remember last week, talking about what the greatest commandments are or is. And they agree, and there's this syncing up between them. So Jesus has those connections with other officials. He's talking about the users, the ones who, not for a good cause, but for the sake of appearance and social standing, like to get dressed up and go to the galas and rub elbows with the rich, famous, powerful, hoping that it will rub off and they'll get more and they'll rise. They love to have their picture taken and show up in the society pages of the Star Tribune, if there are such pages. Those folks, he says, in truth, those folks, they're smart, and they know the law, and they're connected. And so when there is perhaps a vulnerable widow who's been left some properties or some money, they kick into gear and they go sort of chasing the ambulance, though there's no ambulance, and offer their services to help settle this estate. And in so doing, they make sure that they are well compensated. And what happens, Jesus is saying, is they bleed these women dry. Beware of them, he says, in no uncertain terms. And he says it when they're there. And he says it, this is in the temple area. So that's scene one. Curtain comes down. And there's a little break, and now the curtain comes back up on the stage. And in this scene, Jesus is seated across from the treasury of the temple. And the language is intentional. It says he's seated opposite the treasury. He's seated over against the system that is fed through this particular means. And he's watching as these well-to-do people who are well-dressed, and there's sort of a little social event as I envision it, and they're sort of parading up and they're putting in their offerings, and in some cases, they may announce what they've given. In other cases, there may be a priest there receiving their gift, if it's substantial enough, and making known how much it is and what it's for and who is given it, and people are going, ooh, oh, that's something, isn't it? And then, of course, there are others who they put their gift in, and people go, oh, you know, that's not really very much given what they're supposed to have. I think they better step up their game because they're going to lose standing if they don't. And, folks, it is stewardship season, right? So you're supposed to give till it hurts. You've heard that before. That's supposed to be funny. If it's not funny, so be it. I don't believe in that. And then, while there's sort of this hubbub going and they're all congratulating each other, this poor widow, who doesn't qualify to be dirt poor, sneaks in, slips a couple of little coins in the plate that are worth next to nothing, and slips away and disappears. And somebody says, did you see that? Did you see her? And people go, who? What? Didn't you see that woman? Didn't you see what she did? I didn't see anything. Did you see anything? I didn't see anything. Well, you must have heard the coins go in. No, you heard some clank. That's just people's jewelry. That's nothing. She was not even there. You're seeing things. The system that Jesus is talking about makes such people invisible. They don't matter. They don't count. And this poor widow represents upwards of 80% of the population in Judea, Samaria, and Galilee. They are the people that are attracted to Jesus, that follow Jesus, and they have been made expendable and in many cases virtually invisible by this system that's run by Rome and administered by other well-to-do people in the society. But Jesus sees them. He sees this woman. And he sees not what she's given, the amount, that doesn't matter to him. But he sees in her gift a devotion with all her heart, as you sang, Melissa. There's something going on there. She doesn't have much to give, but she is giving. And it's not to this system necessarily, though the system is supposed to be connected and connect her to God. She has this deeper trust. And that's why Jesus notices her and calls his disciples' attention to her. The system that is supposed to represent her and lift her up and care for her does not. So Jesus challenges it. This is supposed to be connected to God. This is supposed to represent the goodness of God. Does it? Does it have any connection to God anymore at all? I need to see it. And maybe the question should be raised about our own system. We're not a Christian nation. Some claim we are. We're not. But we have some roots in this tradition. And we talk about opportunity for all and a place for all. Is that true? Are we living up to, as Martin Luther King said, the creed that we say, that we believe in? Roy Wood Jr. Was raised in Birmingham, Alabama. his father, Roy Wood Sr., was a local celebrity of sorts. He was on the radio. And if you listened to this particular radio station, you knew him, and he was known around the community. The irony sort of was that though he talked a lot publicly, he spoke very little to his son. And so there's, I think, a sadness and a grief, a loss in that. And I wonder if that has anything to do with Roy's chosen profession, because he's a comedian, and he's known across the nation. He's on late-night TV. And I think sometimes comedians take the sadness that they feel and they turn that into the energy to make people laugh. Anyway, he discovered this gift when he was in high school. He tried to play ball, and he couldn't play ball worth a darn. But he could heckle the opposing team from the bench like nobody else. And he did it in such a way that he would get the parents of the opposing team members laughing. He would even get the umpire laughing sometimes with his jabber. A gift. So on Tuesday night, maybe you saw, he was on Finding Your Roots with Henry Louis Gates. That's a genealogical search show that description sounds boring. It's fascinating and funny and touching and rich. So well done. So Gates brings his guests in and provides them with this book that is sort of on paper an archaeological dig down through the layers of their particular family history. And they go page by page. And so he leads Roy Wood Jr. through this search, starting with his parents, and then going to his grandparents, and then great-grandparents. And he shows Roy things about his family that he has no clue of, didn't know anything about. And he's able, with this team that does all this research, to go back as far as an ancestor who was literally born in Africa and brought to this country as a child, as a slave. His name was Sam Wood. And it's just sort of astounding to both of them that record is there, because most of them, there are no records. They said that it's rare for an American black to have really any depth of documents in terms of family history, because it wasn't kept and it wasn't important because of the system that brought them here. So Roy learns all these things about these members of his family, some that he knew, but going back to people he'd never knew, never even heard of. And then he turns one page. And before he does, there's all these names and these connections and these occupations and stories. Turns the page, and there's like a ledger sheet from 1850. And it's the property of a man named Cary Wood who lived in central South Carolina. And there's listed with the livestock these persons by age and by gender. No names. With the turn of a page, those people who Roy just met and heard about their occupations and their relationships and the dates of their lives and the things that they did in their communities, suddenly they become nobodies. Their humanity is erased with one turn of a page. And that's what that system did. What it did to thousands, millions of people, thousands of people. And it's just kind of stunning. People who were there suddenly sort of disappear, except in terms of the work they can do and the offspring workers they can produce. Jesus is sitting opposite the treasury, and he's watching people who have the wherewithal to put in contributions And then he sees this woman who has virtually nothing, giving what little she has. He says she's giving her life. She's giving her life to this. Is it worth that? Is it worth her life, what she gives it to? He sees her because she's not giving to the institution as much as she's giving what it's supposed to represent. The God in whom she trusts, the one who holds her heart and her life in God's self. When Roy sees that page, that ledger page, and Henry Louis Gates is making the connections from the previous page, this person by this name would be this one, and this would be this one, and as if he's sort of erasing them as he goes. And Roy suddenly goes, stop, 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 stop. It's almost like they're dying right there. And he can't take it. And there's this long pause. And then he says, I don't know what to say. I'm so outraged and I'm so proud. I'm so grateful and I'm so ashamed. I'm so angry and I'm so glad and humbled. And I don't know what to do with it all. And Gates says, exactly, yes. Hold it all. All of that. Proud of your family, your ancestors, ashamed and outraged at a nation that would do that to people, treat people that way, and let that go on for hundreds of years. Hold all of that in you. Hold it right here. Let it fuel you. Let it serve what it needs to serve. At the very end of this episode, they always do the DNA revelation. If there's a relative that this person doesn't know that they have, that's a contemporary. And Gates says, if you turn the page, and he does, and there's a picture of John Lewis. And Roy it's almost like he rises up. And at the end of that episode, he says, I just need to get out of here now. I just need to go home and hug my son and tell him that unlike all of those who came before him, he can be anything he wants to be because of all those who came before him. So what will we be, you and I? What will we become to honor those who came before us and to bless those who are yet to come? Amen.